Bonjour everybody and welcome back. If you're new here, hi, I'm Mercury and I am still in France, and today I am at a spectacular place. I am at the Palace of Versailles. So I have an audio guide, so we'll be learning some things and gonna take a look around. I'm don't really know what to expect, but I'm already overwhelmed. So we'll take it slow and we'll learn some things. Let's go see it. So right after you clear security and you walk into the courtyard, this is where we start out. This is where we start. I entered through the entrance on the right-hand side, and this was the first room to greet me. It had this display of 3 statues set up. And in this room, it sort of helped me figure out how to use the audio guide as I learned about the different statues and the meanings behind them. As I continued on, there was a lovely cathedral, and the architecture and artwork were amazing, but we weren't able to go inside. This area then progressed into a hallway of multiple rooms. So it was multiple connecting rooms similar to these, just absolutely covered in artwork. It really spoke to the history of Versailles. It helped give me a lot of understanding about Louis XIV and many things I did not know, both about his reign and about Versailles. Some of the things that I learned was that Louis XIV was one of the longest reigning monarchs in European history. He also loved fine arts and the finer things in life, which also fueled a lot of wars because that was how empires grew at that time. But ultimately, a lot of those decisions led to the building of Versailles, where I am right now. So Versailles has had several renovations over the years, and when they do make updates and do restorative work, sometimes the original pieces don't go back to their original spots. And this room had some original pieces on display, and they had been restored, but they were not in condition to go back to the original locations of where they were. There were other things that caught my attention, like this sculpture here, because if you look at all of the detail on this bust, on this, like what would be a drape of fabric, look at the minutia and little tiny carvings that make up this emblem. At this point, I headed upstairs and started walking towards the grand apartments. But much like on the first floor, there's another long corridor of multiple rooms that are connected, absolutely filled with artwork. This right here is a great example of how the audio guide works. There were signs in front of various pieces of art, and they had a code on them. In this case, it was 560, and you just tap that into the audio guide and it will play the corresponding information. Super user-friendly, it was easy to hear, you could adjust the volume, and they had multiple languages available. What really struck me is that the art was not just paintings. I mean, look at the embroidery on this chair. This chair is a work of art. Everything had so much thought and detail in it. And that thought and detail extended all the way from the floor, all the way to the ceilings, whether they were painted with intricate scenes or like this room, having these meticulously detailed carvings in each of the corners. It was absolutely breathtaking. Imagining the workmanship of the artists at that time putting this together. Like when I look at all of this art on the ceiling, I can't help but imagine the artists laying on their back, climbing up on scaffolding, way up high, having to ignore how high up they are, and yet painting these masterpieces, painting these scenes of like history and triumphs and battles. Talk about grace under pressure and what they were able to create. Amazing. This was one of the bedchambers, and it really struck me just how rich the coloring was, and the details and the art, and it just, I mean, it screams luxury. There is no understatement here. And speaking of no understatement, or rooms that have absolutely no chill, Hall of Mirrors. It's so amazing. I spent so much time really loitering in this area because it was so hard to grasp everything that was going on here. From the moldings and the sculptures, to the chandeliers, to the paintings, to the view of the gardens out the windows. One of the things that I learned is that the Hall of Mirrors wasn't always enclosed. Originally, it was open, so it was like a giant veranda, and it just overlooked the gardens. But all of this gorgeous artwork was being damaged because it was open and exposed to the elements. So that's why the windows were installed and it was closed off to the elements. And just off the Hall of Mirrors is one of the antechambers that then leads into King Louis's bedroom, where they had elaborate waking up and going to bed ceremonies every single day. As you continue through the antechamber and then around to the next room is where the Queen's bedchamber is. And something that I learned while on this tour is that during the Revolution, when they were coming after Marie Antoinette, she was able to escape through a hidden doorway that connected the Queen's chamber to the King's chamber. Ultimately, they caught up to her, but in that moment, she was able to escape through that hidden doorway. And if you look, it's kind of next to that dresser, between the dresser and the bed. Following the Hall of Mirrors, there was a room that was dedicated to the French Revolution. It contained portraits and sculptures of figures that contributed to that cause. So that was incredible and overwhelming, and I learned a tremendous amount. I got a history lesson. I got schooled in Louis XIV primarily, but it does talk through Louis XIV, Louis XV, and French Revolution, and into Napoleon Bonaparte. So a lot of history. Sorry, it's really bright. I need them. But what I really found interesting was Louis XIV's appreciation for art in all its forms. So not just painting and sculpture. There's actually a painting that was in one of the rooms that highlighted this. It had a violin in it. It had a globe. It was art and sciences. It was just this true appreciation of the wonder and specter of what the world is. And that was what sort of stood out to me. It was also interesting seeing all the different rooms. The Hall of Mirrors was astounding and breathtaking, and I lingered in the Hall of Mirrors probably the longest of any of the rooms, but they were all spectacular. Another thing that I learned is that the Queen's bedchamber, when Marie Antoinette was fleeing, when the French Revolution was happening, there's a hidden door in the room that leads from the Queen's bedchamber to the King's bedchamber, and she was able to escape via that door. Ultimately, they caught up to them, but in that moment, that was how she escaped. So a bit of history, actually more than a bit, a lot of history. I am so glad I got the audio guide. It was so helpful. I learned so much from that audio guide, because there are signs with information, but it's not as much information. You get a much more robust understanding if you have the audio guide, so it's a worthwhile add-on. The other thing is it's super crowded. It's very busy, very popular. So you have to come with your patient pants because it's a slow moving process. For the whole palace, I had a 10 a.m. entry and I got here right on time. It's now 1 o'clock. I spent 3 hours walking through, so there's a lot. And now I also have access to the garden. Hey, future Mercury here. So I decided to split this into 2 videos because there was just so much to see and so much going on. So with that, I am done for the day and I will see you real soon with the gardens at the Palace of Versailles. And until then, stay inspired by everyone. Take care.